In the headlines, the top diplomats of South Korea and Germany urge North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons, saying it won't be able to pursue its nukes along with economic development. Japanese historians confirm the Japanese military was involved in forcing women into sexual enslavement during World War II. And Ukraine, Russia, and the European Union sign a deal to resume Russian natural gas supplies to Ukraine, easing concerns of winter supply disruptions for EU states. Happy Friday, everyone. You're watching Arirang News, coming to you live from Seoul. I am Kang Tae-ri. Let's begin with South Korea's groundwork for unification of the two Koreas. The first meeting of a joint unification advisory panel between South Korea and Germany was held in Seoul today. The German foreign minister says building trust between the two Koreas is the key to a smooth unification process. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
At a joint press conference with his South Korean counterpart Yun Byung-se on Friday, German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier said conditions for the reunification of the two Koreas were easing.
North Korea is becoming more and more isolated, and its longtime allies are not as opposed to reunification of the Korean peninsula as they once were.
Steinmeier is on a two-day visit to Seoul for a meeting of their joint unification advisory panel. As the world's only divided nation, Korea is seeking to learn lessons from Germany's unification. The German minister said trust and patience were essential.
Through a process of trust building, South Korea must observe whether North Korea responds positively. If not, the South must not make any hasty investments and rather control its tempo.
Steinmeier said, however, this trust-building process will never be possible as long as the North clings to its nuclear program. And while a round of inter-Korean meetings slated for Thursday was scrapped due to controversy over anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaigns by South Korean activists, the importance of dialogue was emphasized.
Just like East and West Germany engaged in dialogue and cooperation, the two Koreas should do the same. It's also important for Korea to secure the support and understanding of its neighboring countries, as Germany had done.
The visiting German foreign minister said that Germany had achieved what all had believed was impossible, and added that a similar happy ending will also be possible on the Korean peninsula. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And in Seoul, with the German foreign minister, a German lawmaker who recently returned from a trip to Pyongyang, that is, agrees that North Korea is ready to open dialogue on the human rights issue and inter-Korean ties. Hartmut Kuschik says Thursday that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is still firmly in power despite speculation about his health conditions stemming from his recent break from the public eye. He went on to say that North Korea wants to boost ties with Germany as well as the European Union. Mr. Kuschik went on to say that he told the North Korean leader that Germany is willing to be an honest advisor by sharing its experience as a divided country, but that it cannot act as a mediator between the two Koreas. The now former U.S. ambassador to South Korea, Sung Kim, has been assigned to a new position within the Obama administration. Diplomatic sources say he will serve a double role as the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and Pacific Affairs and Washington's Special Representative for North Korea policy. Finishing his three-year term last week, the first Korean-American ambassador to South Korea expressed a desire to continue working on issues related to the Korean peninsula. The Korean Air Force is celebrating the operational deployment of its first indigenously developed fighter jet, the FA-50. And as our Kim Hyun-min reports, this is just the beginning of the military's plans for the state-of-the-art jet.
This is the first Korean-built fighter jet called the FA-50 taking off from an airstrip. A short time later, it shows off a number of airborne maneuvers that demonstrate its capabilities.
적 지역에 깊숙이 침투하여 강화 공격을 하고 위협 회피 기동을 실시하겠습니다.
The FA-50 is an improved version of its predecessor, the TA-50, and will play a support role for the Korean Air Force. The fighter jet has a top speed of 1,800 kilometers an hour, which is roughly 1.5 times faster than the speed of sound. The FA-50 has an operation radius of 270 kilometers, is loaded with air-to-air and air-to-surface missiles, as well as with 4.5 tons of high-tech weaponry, such as GPS-guided direct attack munitions. It can also detect enemy radar and comes equipped with a missile defense system that makes it difficult to shoot down. The fighter jet has successfully passed all tactical tests, and experts believe it can easily outrun and outmaneuver the backbone of North Korea's Air Force, the MiG-21.
By integrating the FA-50 into frontline bases, we'll be better capable of countering threats from the north.
The South has now established a first battalion of 20 FA-50s and plan to create 2 more by the year 2016 to replace its aging fleet of F-5 fighter jets. This past March, the Philippines signed a contract to purchase 12 FA-50s for $420 million. South Korea is currently in negotiations with 3 other countries who have also expressed an interest in the fighter jet. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Another external risk stemming from Japan, Tokyo surprised global financial markets this Friday afternoon by announcing fresh monetary stimulus measures. The Bank of Japan says it would step up its asset purchases at an annual pace of 80 trillion yen, or roughly $720 billion from the current pace of 60 to 70 trillion yen. The unexpected move came in response to a lack of economic growth following a sales tax hike back in April. The benchmark Nikkei stock index spiked to a 7-year high following the announcement and finished up nearly 5%. Experts here in Korea are concerned, though, that Tokyo's latest move could weigh on local exporters by eroding their price competitiveness. A growing number of Chinese companies and individuals are making investments overseas. Citing the country's Commerce Ministry, the state-run People's Daily reported that China's outbound direct investment stood at $17.8 billion last year. That's nearly 40 times higher than the figure recorded 11 years ago. And this year's outbound direct investment is also on a rise. It went up over 20% in the first 9 months compared from the previous year to around $75 billion. President Park Geun-hye has asked Saudi Arabia to take part in Korea's project to establish itself as the oil hub of Northeast Asia. Meeting with visiting Saudi economy-related ministers on Friday, President Park Geun-hye added that stabilization of oil supply and demand in the region will also benefit oil-producing countries. The president then sought support for Korean companies to win nuclear reactor and infrastructure construction bids in the Arab country, to which the Saudi delegation promised Korea's participation in a future nuclear reactor project. President Park is scheduled to further discuss boosting economic cooperation with Saudi Crown Prince, that is, Salman, on the sidelines of next month's G20 summit in Australia. Apple devotees started to fall in line outside smartphone stores around the country last night. October 31st is the official launch date of Apple's iPhone 6 and 6 Plus for Korea. Customers who pre-ordered the latest models have been among the first to get their hands on the highly anticipated phones. Industry watchers say the first round of pre-orders for both models on mobile carriers SK Telecom, KT, and LG U Plus were filled in less than 30 minutes last Friday. Prices start at roughly $750 for the iPhone 6 and around $875 for the larger iPhone 6 Plus.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, Join Kang Chae-ri for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8, every weeknight on Arirang TV.
UN Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to... Historians consider Japan's forced mobilization of women into sexual enslavement during World War II as historical fact, while the Shinzo Abe administration in Japan continues to hedge over the issue. But their case has just been further weakened by a new report written by Japanese authors who say there's simply no disputing that Japan was responsible for the atrocities. Connie Lee has more.
It's confirmation from Japanese scholars. Despite what Abe cabinet officials have said about the women who were forced into sexual slavery before and during World War II, Japanese historians say it is an unshakable truth that the Japanese military was deeply involved in the forced mobilization of the so-called comfort women. The country's representative research group, the Historical Science Society of Japan, recently released a report that criticizes the inaccurate historical accounts of the sex slaves, saying it is a fact that the women were forced into sexual servitude. Arirang TV spoke with the scholars in Japan, who said their report is timely.
We as historians make the statement because reflection on the issue and over relations between Korea and Japan is needed. We cannot deny the fact that sexual slavery did exist and the suffering of the victims was real.
The report goes against the Abe administration's stance on the issue. The Japanese leader has said that the women, many of whom were from Korea, were not forcefully mobilized, which he defined as breaking into a house and dragging a woman out. However, the scholars define it much differently, saying that forced mobilization includes all actions that go against a person's will, such as scamming, threatening, and trafficking. Prime Minister Abe says his cabinet would uphold an official statement issued in 1993, which acknowledged that Japan forced women into sexual servitude. But cabinet officials have openly and publicly denied that in recent months. Abe himself said there was no evidence to prove the claims. It's a move that suggests he wants to minimize his country's responsibility for the more than 50,000 estimated women who were forced into sexual slavery for the Japanese military. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Riding on the crest of the Korean wave, a mainly popular Korean TV series, an increasing number of Chinese couples are coming to Korea to get a unique Korean touch to their pre-wedding photos. Connie Kim reports.
Making a reservation at this wedding planning company is not a Korean couple, but Chinese to-be-weds who came to Korea for a photo shoot package. This Chinese couple will select their wedding dress and tux, get their hair and makeup done, and get their wedding photos taken. And they'll do it all in just 3 days.
After seeing actress Chun Ji-hyun in the drama My Love from the Star, I got interested in Korean-style makeup. As I was preparing for my wedding, I thought it would be meaningful for us as a couple to come to Korea and get our wedding photos taken here.
Bride-to-be Yao says she is thrilled to experience some of the high-quality services Korea's wedding industry has to offer, even if it comes with a price tag that is 3 to 4 times higher than in China. Despite the high cost of photo shooting packages for Chinese couples here, the nation's wedding industry is seeking to attract more would-be newlyweds from China, seeking a Korean touch to their once-in-a-lifetime experience. The craze for a high-quality taste of Korea's wedding industry has led to an explosive growth in recent years. One of Korea's largest wedding planning companies says it has shot wedding photos for nearly 790 Chinese couples this year alone, a major jump from the 5 it had in 2007. And as more companies cater to what Chinese couples are looking for, Korea's wedding industry is set to leap forward.
With the popularity of Korean dramas, Chinese couples want their wedding photos to be exactly like Korean celebrities' photo shoots. They look for backgrounds with tall skyscrapers or sets that show they are in Korea.
Many wedding studios now have translators on hand to help lure even more Chinese couples looking for specialized Korean wedding services. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Hanok, or Korea's traditional houses, were once thought to be consigned to the past, but a growing number of Koreans are now choosing hanok over, say, a high-rise apartment. That's because hanoks are now being fitted with sleek, modern interiors to go with their traditional exterior beauty. Park Ji-won reports.
Hangyang-han is a gallery cafe that opened last year in central Seoul. The cafe features a traditional Korean exterior and modern interior designs. For its unique traditional beauty, it received the Best Hanok Award earlier this month from the nation's Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. Kim Hyung-woo, the French-trained architect and owner of the gallery, says he blended modern construction materials while maintaining the unique beauty of Korean hanok.
I tried to give traditional Korean architecture a more modern feel that fits the modern lifestyle. I blended modern materials to create modern spatial beauty in the traditional house. I think traditional Korean architecture can be reinterpreted in an infinite number of ways.
The number of hanok houses in the nation has risen to about 100,000, nearly double the number from just 6 years ago. Due to their rise in popularity, SH Corporation, the public urban development company for the Seoul metropolitan area, has created a new hanok village in northern Seoul that caters to individual buyers. A few months after going on the market, about 85% of the 156 lots available had been already sold.
Unlike modern apartments, hanok is built in an eco-friendly way due to its construction materials, such as rocks, red clay, and trees. So people concerned about their health and allergies tend to show more interest in hanok these days.
Combining the eco-friendly and aesthetic strength of traditional Korean housing elements with the comforts of modern living, hanok houses these days strike a balance for the best of both worlds. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
After months of intense negotiations, Russia has finally signed a new deal with Ukraine to resume gas supplies to the crisis-stricken country and the European Union. And to tell us more, Paul E. is joining us from the News Center. Paul, this agreement was brokered by the EU, and not a moment too soon, with winter fast approaching.
That's right. The deal between Moscow and Kiev was struck on Thursday in Brussels and will ensure those much-needed fuel lines keep pumping into EU nations. But critics are questioning Moscow's motivations behind this diplomatic breakthrough, as the deal also requires the cash-strapped Ukrainian government to pay its multi-billion-dollar bill to Moscow within the next 2 months. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Russia has agreed to resume natural gas supplies to Ukraine and the European Union throughout the cold winter months. The deal reached on Thursday in Brussels comes after several grueling rounds of talks.
With the strong support of the European Commission, Ukraine and Russia have today found agreement on their outstanding energy debt issues and on an interim solution that enables supplies to continue this winter.
Under the deal, Ukraine will pay $3.1 billion in 2 installments by the end of this year to cover its outstanding debt for its previous supplies. Kiev is also required to pay $1.5 billion up front to cover the bill from now until March next year. The European Union will help Ukraine make the payments through aid and guarantees.
The process has not been easy. However, we have managed to come to a compromise, and on many matters, the Russian has compromised as regards the price, as regards the structuring of the debt. This is our contribution to the compromise in order to stabilize the situation in Ukraine so that the autumn and winter period is safe and that the supply to the European consumers is also stable.
Meanwhile, the European Energy Commissioner said the agreement could be the first glimmer of a relaxation in the relationship between Russia and Ukraine. Gas supplies were suspended in June following disputes over Russia's annexation of Crimea earlier in the year. Ukraine, which relies on Russia for about half of its gas supplies, is being forced to rely on gas transfers from nearby European nations and its own reserves. A third of the European Union's gas is also from Russia, of which roughly 50% is transported in pipelines crisscrossing Ukraine. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And turning to West Africa, Paul, the head of the military in Burkina Faso has dissolved parliament and declared an interim government to lead the country after days of violent protest. The civil unrest in the former French colony hit a tipping point this past week. What's triggered this major power shift?
Well, the move by the army comes after tens of thousands of demonstrators packed the streets of the capital city, Ouagadougou, storming parliament and setting fire to government buildings. At the center of this crisis is Burkina Faso's President Blaise Compaoré. Public outrage erupted when he defied opposition demands to step down after ruling the country for 27 years. At a news conference on Thursday, the army responded, declaring a state of emergency.
Given the serious deterioration of the situation, given the need to protect the country from chaos and ensure national unity and cohesion, the Chief of the General Staff brings to the attention of the people the following provisions. The National Assembly is dissolved. The government is dissolved. A transitional body will be set up in consultation with all the forces of the nation in order to prepare for the return to normal constitutional order.
Compaoré says he will hand over power after a 12-month transition period, but opposition leaders and protesters are demanding his resignation effective immediately. Security forces have reportedly opened fire on anti-government protesters, shooting dead dozens and injuring scores of others across the country.
And staying within West Africa, a vessel carrying military and medical aid from Britain has docked in Sierra Leone. This humanitarian mission aims to help the Ebola-stricken country, but will it be enough to turn the tide in this fight against the virus?
Well, it's definitely a step in the right direction. According to the WHO, Sierra Leone is seeing the disease spread and reach areas past the capital, with more than 1,500 Ebola deaths recorded within its borders. The UK ship Argus brought a new crew of 350 medics and Marines, as well as vehicles and helicopters. Sierra Leone's top anti-Ebola official welcomed the help, even as he warned the crisis situation would get worse before it gets better. Meanwhile, Samantha Power, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, said more needed to be done.
This is a crisis that is so vast, with needs so great, with potential consequences so dire, that no country can afford to stand on the sidelines. A few are doing a lot, but a lot are doing very little or nothing at all. It is well past time to join what is a historic, groundbreaking, life-saving mission, a noble mission.
Speaking in Brussels on Thursday, Power said every possible resource was needed, from doctors to nurses and even basic medical supplies. The UN says it requires at least 53 treatment facilities in West Africa to curb the spread of the outbreak.
And finally, Halloween is upon us today, so happy Halloween, everyone. And this is certainly catching on and gaining popularity here in Korea as well, although it's nothing compared to what happens in the United States. But I've always thought that Halloween was more geared for kids, but it looks like adults are now leading the trend.
That's right. In fact, an estimated 75 million grown-ups in the U.S. will join children on this Friday, many dressed in elaborate and expensive outfits. Costume shops are being swamped this year with the hot costume. Reportedly, Disney's evil queen Maleficent, which will rent for a hefty $450. The spending spree is expected to boost sluggish retail sales nationwide as businesses cater more to older trick-or-treaters.
I've heard in the industry a lot of mom and pop shops are actually getting rid of their children's department because they can't get the profit margin up. So they've really just kind of thrown that to the pop-up shops so that they can customize and kind of specialize in adult costume making instead.
According to the National Retail Federation, Americans will spend a total of $7.4 billion on Halloween this year. Decorations and candy will take up most of that budget, while pet owners are expected to dole out $350 million on costumes for their cats and dogs. Cherry?
All right, thank you so much for those stories, Paul, and happy Halloween, of course, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours.
Happy Halloween, everyone. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the weather updates. It was a wet and cloudy day here in Korea due to a low pressure trough approaching from the West Sea, and it's still raining in some regions. And more rainfall is in store now. 10 to 40 millimeters is expected for Gangwon province and about 5 to 20 for Seoul, as well as both Jeollado provinces. So make sure to grab an umbrella on your ways out. Showers should briefly clear up tomorrow afternoon, but resume on a Sunday morning. Now, so with the rain falling all weekend, morning lows will dip to 4 degrees on Monday, leading to chillier conditions. On to tomorrow's readings. Seoul and Busan reached 21, while Gwangju hits 20. On to other regions. Jeju peaks at 20, while Mount Kumgang hits 11. That's all the updates I have for you now. I'll be back with more after 10.
And before we wrap things up here, this just-in rival parties here in Korea have reached a long-awaited breakthrough agreement regarding the probe on the April ferry disaster investigation. They're about to release more details at around 8:30 p.m. Korea time, just a few minutes away. And of course, stay tuned for our later newscast for your details. And that will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching.